Hi, this is Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and welcome to Job Search Radio on webtalkradio.net. I start each show with a job search tip that I call the Job Search Insider. And today's tip is about thank you letters. Now, most people I'm running into these days have gotten out of the habit of sending thank you letters. But I must tell you, I saw a statistic recently that was pretty stunning and should wake you up to the importance of sending a thank you letter. The statistic I saw said 58% of employers say it's important to send a thank you note after an interview, and 24% say it's very important. In other words, more than 80% of all employers think there's a value to you sending a thank you letter. Now, I want to be clear, not every thank you letter is going to, quote, work, but they can be very helpful. And the absence of sending a thank you letter can wind up having a negative impact on your candidacy. So if you're going to send a thank you letter, which I think you should, here's what should go into it. First of all, you thank them for making time to see you. Then you mention a specific part of your experience that would help you excel in the role. From there, confirm and state your interest in the position, and tell them that you look forward to hearing from them about the next step in the process. So again, 4 very simple things to communicate. I also want to tell you that you need to email it, not mail it. Why? Very simple. By the time U.S. Mail delivers your thank you note to them, they've already made their decision. There's going to be no beneficial impact on your candidacy. Email it. Get it to them right away. Do not delay to the next day. If you've gone out for a 5 o'clock interview, send it that evening when you get home. If you went out for one at 9 a.m., there's no excuse for you not to send it that day. So again, thank you letters are extremely important in the eyes of an employer. Don't get lazy, or don't be lazy. Send one every time. So today's guest is executive coach Hal Klegman. He specializes in effective communications, business relationships, networking, and preparing executives for job changes. Hal spent 30 years working as executive recruiter at Chicago-based Roy Tolman Associates, a boutique technology search firm, retiring last year to pursue a graduate degree. Hal, welcome back to Job Search Radio. Great to have you on board.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for inviting me a second time.
You're welcome. Now, the first show that we did was about resume writing. Now we're going to come back and talk with people about interviewing, a subject that you and I know a heck of a lot about. And this show is going to focus in on primarily white-collar workers, or well, no one's really a white-collar worker anymore. I think they're more khakis and polo shirts these days. But we're going to look at some of I'm sorry, Hal. But we're going to look at, the mistakes people make and how easy they are to be corrected. So what do you see as the big mistakes that people make when they interview?
They don't prepare for the interview, and too many people, when they do prepare, don't prepare properly. There's a lot of interview tips out there, and almost all of them seem to put a large emphasis on finding out about the company you're interviewing with. And I believe that that's important. However, it's not primary. They're not going to be interviewed to see what an expert you are on the corporation you're applying to. You should absolutely know more than a little bit about it. You're going to be interviewed on how much you know about yourself, and what you do know about yourself and how you present it, how that fits into the needs of the company, and in particular, the needs of the hiring manager. When
I think of interviewing, Hal, I think in terms of demonstrating not just simply what you know, and what your experience is, but how your knowledge and experience relates to what they care about and what they need.
Absolutely. The trick, and it is almost a trick in any interview, is to find out what the manager is hiring for. Now, my belief, and this is based on 3.5 decades of executive search experience, is that all managers in a hierarchy outside of an owner are looking for the same thing when they choose to hire someone, and that's simply someone who will make them look good. Now, that's not about brown-nosing, not at all. It's about understanding what has to be accomplished and what the priorities of that manager are. In fact, and I learned this from you, Jeff, the first question that I have an applicant ask a potential employer, a manager, not a human resource person, unless it's a human resource job, is what has to be accomplished and what are your priorities?
And this, of course, allows you to tailor your answers to what matters to them.
Exactly. But then I take this back to the resume. As you know, I believe the resume and the interview are completely intertwined. Look at the projects you put down on your resume. Take a piece of paper and for each project, write down exactly how you went about solving the problem you were tasked to solve. And at work, everything can be worded as a problem I was asked to solve, whether it's putting chicken in the deep fryer at McDonald's or building a house or planning a merger and acquisition. It's a problem to be solved. So if you start out with, this is the problem, these are the sources I had, this is the solution I came up with, this is the result of implementing my solution, that goes on the resume. What you're doing for the interview is you're taking that how you solve the problem, step by step, write it out. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, etc. So that there is a nice coherent narrative to the solution. This is what I did. And at some point, especially for complex problems, there will come a place in the solution where you did something that didn't work. Now, my experience is that people don't reach senior management positions because they never made a mistake. They tend to reach senior management positions because they learn from their mistakes. So if I'm interviewing someone who told me they never screwed up, I simply don't believe them, or they don't have any real work experience.
I want to back up for a second, Hal. I know when we did this show on writing resumes, you were very big on the idea of discussing metrics as the benchmark for an individual and their success on a task or a project. How much they might have made for a firm, how much they might have saved the firm in the way of revenue. In answering these questions that, as you're talking about, do you want them to mention the metrics as well?
That generally, yes. There really are 4 words on a resume and 4 words in an interview that will immediately get someone's attention. Earned, saved, increased, and decreased. One of the questions I will ask people when I'm interviewing someone, why is this company you work at better because you work there? What have you contributed? And at that point, metrics come into play. And now I'm living down south now, having moved down to Arkansas from Chicago. And part of the culture down here is not boasting on yourself. And
well, interviews are one of the few times that institutionally it is required that you boast and you talk about your achievements.
Absolutely. I tell people down here, if you don't have a high opinion of what you do, why should a potential employer have a high opinion?
Thus, it's essential that you be prepared to talk about your successes and achievements in the course beginning of the interview.
It's all about accomplishments. I don't I have much less interest in what someone was responsible for a traditional white-collar job than I do in what they accomplished. It's what I go back to that question. Why is this place better because you're there? What did you add? And the inability to come up with an answer is exactly like an inability to get the job.
And it's one of those huge mistakes that people make. So if I'm going to follow your thinking, and I know we've talked about this many times over the years, we start off with that opening question about what the hiring manager needs to have accomplished. And then from there, once you get that answer, they're invariably going to ask you to tell me about yourself question, right?
Which is the hardest question on any interview. It usually gets an eye roll and the head goes up and looks at the ceiling.
So how would you suggest someone answer the tell me about yourself question?
I have finally come up with a format for answering that question. We're looking for information that is not on the resume, and that's usually the information that's transmitted when that question is asked. What I'm looking for is, tell me something personal about yourself. I have 9 children. I grew up on a farm. I spent 6 months traveling in East Asia. I'm that you're a military veteran, I would hope belongs on the resume, unlike when we started in the business back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And
what follows that?
Something personal about yourself, a hero story. Something you have done that is noteworthy, that's not on the resume or is not on the resume in any detail. And finally, something about a goal. And I have been telling people that if your goal is 5 years out or 10 years out, which is a really long time, it's amorphous, and that's a good thing in this case. Managers don't want to know that you want to be a director within the next 18 months. Nor do they want to know that you don't have goals. So you pick a goal that's 5 years out, and most managers are thinking, well, you probably won't be here in 4, so that's fine. And so you have these 3 aspects, something personal, a hero story, and something about a goal. The trick is you have no more than 15 seconds for each of those 3 pieces. Questions need to be answered in 45 seconds or less.
Why do you think that is, Hal?
Because the mind of the interviewer will wander. I teach a method of preparing 3 responses to all detailed questions about projects. Your first 45 seconds should be an overview of the project and my role in it. At which point I will ask, do you have any further questions? Would you like more information? If they have a question, you answer it. If they want more information, you have bought another 45 seconds. So some more detail about your particular role in the project is now required. Ask again after 45 seconds. Would you like me to continue? Do you want to hear more about this particular project? If the answer is yes, you've now bought 2 minutes of time. And if you're really good at making presentations and you can use a whiteboard effectively, now is the time to do it. If not, take the 2 minutes. If you can't explain a complex project to me in what is now 3.5 minutes, more than likely you can't explain it to me in 3.5 hours.
And unfortunately, the hiring manager's mind will channel surf, as I like to refer to it, if you start going past that final 2 minutes. They're going to wonder when you're going to get to the point already, because they have a limited amount of time available on their calendar. So they want you to move through things as quickly as you can to illustrate your points, so they can get on to what they need to evaluate.
I'm glad you brought up the point around how much time they have on their calendar. I always ask applicants, you have a 2 o'clock interview. It's 5 minutes to 2. You show up. The receptionist calls the manager and says, Susie Smith is here for her interview. What do you believe the manager is doing in that time immediately prior to your interview? And the answer I usually get is my resume or thinking about the job opening. The truth of the matter, and I've tested this with manager after manager, is what that manager is thinking is, I don't have time for this. Isn't there someone else who can interview this person? And so when the applicant walks into the office of the person that's going to hire them or not, they're already in a hole. They're already in a deficit situation. So out comes the big smile, some meaningless chit-chat, and then they're asked, tell me about yourself. At which point the candidate rolls their eyes, looks up at the ceiling, and blowing the interview, and it's not even 2 minutes into it.
Agreed. Most of the time, if you are passive and allow the employer to immediately go into tell me about yourself, they can go back to thinking about how they can finish and when they can finish that which they left to talk to you. Instead, by getting their attention right away, by asking that, what do you need to have done here type of question at the beginning, you pull them into the interview, get their attention, remind them of what they're looking for in someone, right? You're reminding them about what it is they're trying to screen for, and you may actually glean some additional information that wasn't on that job description that hopefully you saw beforehand, that made new thinking about the job. You see, one of the things I know about job descriptions is that from the time the position is approved by HR and the powers that be until the time you walk in the door, it's gone through a couple of changes since then. And
Jeff, my primary responsibility when I was at Altman was less about making placements of applicants that I had recruited and more about bringing in new business. And the way I brought in new business was by working with managers on job descriptions. Job description forms usually come out of human resources, and it's a list of responsibilities followed by a list of required skills and a list of desired skills if it's a sophisticated human resource department, followed by information that you have to be strong enough to lift up a 10-pound box. What I ask managers to do is write a person's annual review and make it glowing. That's the job description. Now we know it has to be accomplished. Work backwards as to the skills that are desired so that that might be accomplished. But this isn't about knowing how to do something. This is about knowing what has to be accomplished and accomplishing it. But the emphasis on resumes on this is what I accomplished, not what I was responsible for. It's why during the interview, talk about how you achieved something, what you did that made a difference. Did you increase the value of the company? Did you increase sales? Did you decrease downtime? Did you earn money for the company? Did you save money for the company? How did you do that? If you walk in the door to an interview and you ask some manager, you say to a manager, as you're shaking hands, I've read the job description. I spoke with Susie in Human Resources. I spoke with Mrs. Smith in your department. They've given me a picture of what you're looking for, but the position reports to you. Would you be good enough to tell me what has to be accomplished? What are your priorities? You can get an answer about 40% of the time. And if they go into answering that question, you're already hired.
And if they choose not to answer the question, Hal, should someone push to get the answer or just let it go?
Let it go. Because some managers are just going to go, it's a good question and we'll get to that. It's a ploy.
That's what I advise people as well. Let it go.
Let it go. It's a ploy. Where I do push is at the end of the interview. All interviews end exactly the same way. do you have any questions? I've yet to hear of an interview that ended differently, except for people who were dragged out by the police.
Now, given the fact that they're telling you about the job at the beginning of the interview, you can't ask them to tell you about the job at the end.
Of course you can, because during the course of an interview, when someone's going to get hired, the job description changed. Oh, you can do that. Well, that's great. I hadn't thought of that. It's regular. Assuming you hire me, and assuming that it's 1 year from now, and you are sitting down to write my annual review, what will I have accomplished for you that will get me the best annual review you can imagine writing? That's the final question. What will I have accomplished for you? His job or her job is to get the biggest annual bonus she can get. Your job is to make sure you do everything possible that your boss gets a big bonus. That's how you get your raise.
And it's a beautifully crafted question because it causes them to imagine you in the job.
Exactly.
And imagine you being successful in the role. Very well done, Hal.
Thank you. One of the things I also tell people, and you and I have both done a lot of work with visualizations. Before you go into an interview, visualize the end of the interview where the manager stands up and you stand up and they shake your hand and they say, I look forward to you coming on board. Put that picture of success in your mind. Walk in there believing you're hired. Because if you walk in there not believing you're hired, you will walk out not hired.
It's so true. And I want to go one layer past some of the stuff we've been talking about so far, Hal, and ask you about the personal attributes that an employer is trying to figure out from you in the course of you talking about your achievements. You want to speak to that?
Absolutely. When I hire people, when my clients hire people, and any number of times my clients have brought me in to be part of the interview process with them, critical thinking, adaptability, tenacity. I need people to understand that adaptability and tenacity are absolutely required. You may be working on a project for 2 months. You may have put your heart and soul into it, and 4 layers up in the company, they've decided that they need to switch gears. And your project is now put on hold or put in the trash, and you need to do something else. Well, you're allowed to be upset about it for 3 minutes, and then you need to go and be adaptable. They are not paying you a salary because you get to do what you want. They're paying you a salary because you're accomplishing what they need accomplished. Tenacity. There's a wonderful book called Talent is Overrated. I would rather have someone with a high degree of stick-to-itiveness, as Mrs. Douglas, my 6th grade teacher, used to refer to it, than somebody who's brilliant, but a little flaky. Tenacity, stick-to-itiveness, the willingness and the desire to get the job done regardless of how long it takes or the effort it takes is so highly valued by employers. And if you're putting that into your employment and you're not being appreciated, you're working for the wrong company.
And thus, in the course of the interview, what you're attempting to do is talk about these attributes in telling your stories that we've been talking about, in talking about your achievements, successes, even the personal stories.
Absolutely. I don't want to, I want to hear somebody tell me about a really hard project and a hard-to-meet deadline and a 60-hour week. I want to know that somebody's going to do what it takes to get the job done. I want to know that projects were done on time and in budget. Well, that, of course, is somewhat of a pipe dream for a lot of projects because of what we call mission creep. fact
but
is,
when all is said and done, in the course of telling your story, let's put it this way. In an interview, it's not like they're going to say, "So, do you have tenacity?" Yes, good. That was the right answer. They're going to find this out from the stories that you tell, and where you can tie the bow for them and use words like, it was a very difficult project that I worked on. We had people from different departments coming at us with new requirements all the time, and a management that said, you got to fulfill it. So we always had to adapt to the situation, yet at the same time hold tenaciously to the idea that we were going to deliver this project on time.
The one of the things that comes up right around this particular subject, before you sit down with a manager at a company for an employment interview, rehearse your answers with someone able to make judgments about the quality of the answer. Rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. Interviewing is not fun. Not for the interviewee, and quite frankly, not for the interviewer. Because if they make a mistake, they got to live with it. If they hire the wrong person, their boss comes to them and go, what were you thinking? As opposed to, wow, that Jeff Altman guy you hired, good move. Because that's all the manager wants from you. So rehearse your answers so that they come out coherently, logically.
And I know your boss's boss really only wants to hear about you in the future because someone's called them up and said, this guy 2 levels down from you is terrific. They only want to hear from you when it's time for the review. They never want to hear about you when there's a problem. So you got 2 out of 3 instances where your boss's boss is going to want to hear about you that are positive. And the other one, that's the one that your boss is most worried about.
Exactly. You're not responsible, your boss is.
Very true.
As for her boss, isn't going to blame you, she's going to blame him. And such is the nature of hierarchies. It's what happens when we take on more responsibility. There's more accountability. That's the other thing people want is accountability. If somebody tells me they're going to do something, I assume that it will be done. And when it doesn't get done, I'm not real accepting of excuses. I expect people to deliver what they tell me they'll deliver. So don't overpromise. Show up on time.
We're getting away from interviewing, and that's where our focus needs to be here. So, Hal, are there any points about mistakes people make on interviewing or reminders you want to give people about interviewing that we haven't already covered?
There's little things. Dressing appropriately for an interview is always important. If it's a professional shop and people are in khakis and polo shirts, wear a suit for a man and for a woman. You can't go wrong wearing a suit. Whether or not you have a tie on, well, if it's a casual shop, leave the tie off. If it's a less than casual shop, by all means, wear the tie. Have your shoes shined, your hair cut, your beard trimmed.
Manicure for the men, manicure for the men and the women.
Absolutely. Look like you care about somebody else's opinion about what you look like. Because what you look like is part of that instantaneous judgment people will make in the first few seconds. They look sloppy, I bet they're sloppy.
I did a video for YouTube recently about appearance mattering. Now, this is one of those differences between the genders and how they approach appearance in professional situations. Women know the importance of appearance. It's part of the sexism in our culture. Men, on the other hand, think they can get away with being a little bit more sloppy or casual about appearance. But again, that's one of those benchmarks that firms use. Would your boss want to present you to a group in a different department dress the way you are on that day, or would they rather have someone else do it? And that you have to think that way. And even if you're dressed semi-appropriately, like the shoes aren't shined though, it has an impact, and the impact can be on the amount of the job offer. It's not like they're going to sit there going, his shoes weren't shined today. We're going to offer $5,000 less. It's just that they're going to think less of you. How can folks reach you for advice?
Hal Klegman at gmail.com.
Could you spell your last name for them?
Halklegman. So it's HALKLEGMAN at gmail.com. It comes out, there's no dot or dash or anything between my first and last name on that email address. And I am available for coaching. And I look forward to hearing from your listeners, Jeff.
Thank you. And thanks for being on the show again, Hal.
Thank you for inviting me, Jeff.
You're welcome. Folks, we're going to be back next time with more job hunting advice. I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and you can find out more about my coaching programs at VIPpersonalsearch.com. I also, like Hal, coach people about how to interview, and I've coached tens of thousands of people over the course of my career, and helped more than 1,000 people find positions through my work, and indirectly helped many tens of thousands find positions through their own efforts. So contact me through VIPpersonalsearch.com, or if you happen to have an individual question, you can reach out to me through liveperson.com, where I'm a job search and career coach. Now, by the way, if your firm's trying to hire someone, you can reach out to me at jeffaltman@thebiggamehunter.us. I'd love to help your firm staff positions. And I also want to encourage you to come over to YouTube and watch my channel there, which is The Big Game Hunter TV, all one word, The Big Game Hunter TV. I have hundreds of videos about different elements of job hunting that will help you. Because, folks, as Hal and I have been showing you time and again, job hunting has lots of details to it, and missing on one of those details, making a mistake along the way, can be very costly. You may lose opportunities that, frankly, you could get if only you had the best advice. And, frankly, I'm one of the best recruiters in the United States today, and have spoken with and evaluated more than 400,000 people and helped organizations hire more than 1,000 people over the course of my career. So reach out to me. I'd love to help you find work. I'd love to help you